Hello, everyone, and welcome to the Geomologist Presents. It's been almost a month since I last recorded a show, around September 8th, it looks like, and just been distracted with real life things. And I guess podcasting, though I like to do it, has not been a priority. I really don't know if I've been inspired or I've been inspired and I get distracted. It's pretty easy to do so. However, I do have a call in from M.W. Lewis of the Worlds of M.W. Lewis. It's pretty cool what he called in for. He kind of like about a lot of different things and podcasts that he's caught up in. He was out of town a lot during the summer, and now he's come back full force in the worlds of M.W. Lewis, doing comparisons between movies and books, doing catching us up on his AD&D game, talking about and reading actually from Cervantes. He's reading Don Quixote, the Man of La Mancha. It's a musical as well with Peter O'Toole, I believe. But originally an amazing novel by Miguel Cervantes. I think it's one of the best-selling novels of all time. And it's been really fantastic what he's read so far, and I hope he keeps it up. But other than that, after his call-in, I'll probably comment or reply to it. And then I have some content. Yes, I do. So it was pretty interesting. It was inspired by my ongoing Traveler game. I still have been playing games. I just haven't talked about them. But in my ongoing Traveler game, I was like, man, I really don't need to do this thing where I see it in adventures, especially adventures where they want you to just have an encounter or to fail. So you have an encounter where you roll like stealth 5 times as you get to where you're supposed to get. Why not just do it in one roll? And then if there's a mishap, well, you play out the mishap. So I kind of decided to do that in Traveler. There was one, and then Traveler is great with that because it has sort of the time that it takes to do a certain task. So just figure out the time, give the players what's going on, and if they want to speed up the time, you can make it more difficult, etc. So it really worked out, and I'll get to that. And then almost like the same week, right, there is another situation where the player characters have to kind of sneak into a town, find out who's running the operation, and take out that boss. And you can already see, oh man, this is going to be complicated and very complex. But Pathfinder 2 has this thing called the infiltration system, and how to run an infiltration, and because that's what you got to do. Sometimes you go to a town where everyone's hostile. It's kind of in a way xenophobic, or they don't like someone who's not from there. And this is kind of a way to do that, or to infiltrate into a hostile base or something, or whatever. I don't know if you use it for everything. But it does expedite I guess what I would say that the non-combat, non-action parts, making it interesting and exciting to get to the in-your-face action, I think. So I will talk about that. And then lastly, I wanted to do this earlier, and I apologize. It's already October 3rd. Hey, that's not so bad. It's October 3rd, and in honor of what RPG A Day did, I wanted to do something similar to that, but with another thing that is very near and dear to myself and my sanity, and that is metal and hard rock. And along with gaming, metal and hard rock, and the people who liked it and got together and listened to it or played the games, these were like the two kind of safe spaces for me when I was growing up. And I wanted to explore that, and again, in honor of what Autocratic and Runeslinger did in August, since this is Rocktober. I know there's also OSR-tober and there's also Inktober, but it's been Rocktober for a long time, since as long as I can remember as well. And I got some prompts, so I'll probably do the first 7 or so, because I probably only will do them weekly. And I don't know if I'll put them somewhere, maybe in the show notes. I'll put the prompts that I have, and you can follow along or do it yourself, or just think about it. Think about, it doesn't have to be metal or hard rock. That's what I'm going to talk about. But it can be whatever genre of music you like, and that maybe you've seen, from classical to country to hip hop to whatever, jazz type of music maybe. So that's what M.W. Lewis plays at the front and back end of his podcast because his son is a really good musician. Yeah, so even if you like jazz, check out his podcast anyway. So anyway, speaking of MW again, let's get on to that call.
Carl and Amy, M.W. Lewis here. I just wanted to call in and say I listened to Carl's, not all, I got to be totally honest, but I listened to many of Carl's sort of RPG a day in bunches episodes, and I like that he chose to do them in bunches. I think RPG a day is a great concept, but for people like me who just listens for fun and I don't really play any other, I'm really RPG ignorant, except for my favorite game, Dungeons and Dragons. It's nice to just hear it all in one show. I really admire those who take the time and effort to produce a show a day, literally a day, to address the prompts. But it is a big commitment for you guys to do it. And I think you're onto something by doing it in bunches. Or Spencer at Keep Off the Borderland, he did it all at once at the end of the month, and that's an easy listen when it's done that way, because it's also a big commitment to your listeners to have to tune in frequently to hear the prompts. But no right way or wrong way to do it, obviously, but I personally like it when it's done in bunches. I also want to comment on Amy's hijacked show of family gaming. Family gaming was big in my life. My parents were not learned people. They were not learned, but they liked games. More my dad probably than my mom. And Monopoly seemed to be a big one. My family didn't have much. We didn't do much together. But I do remember all of us sitting around the table playing Monopoly a lot. And my dad taught me chess, which was very special to me, because he, again, was not a learned man, but he was actually pretty good at chess. But my dad was worked in a machine shop, was a supervisor, and he was not a tool and die maker, but he was friends with the tool and die makers. And one day he came home with a completely machine shop homemade chess set for me, which I value and is very precious to me, as both my parents have passed away. Your show made me think back fondly on our game nights, doing puzzles too, and that chess set and playing chess with my dad. And this tradition carried on. My boys liked Monopoly. We would play Monopoly. We'd get them Spy Alley, all kinds of games. And I have to say, we were big on making up games. With my older son, we would sit in the basement and he would want to watch football with me. And I made up a game with him. We called it the Ooh Ooh game. And I would take the lid to the jumbo Lego container and flip it upside down. And it had dimples because it was a Lego. It was like a Lego piece on the top. So if you flipped it upside down, it had like 6 dimples or 8 dimples. And we would take a little pink cat ball and we would sit all the way on the couch and put this thing right under the television, the lid. And our game was we had to roll the ball and get it in one of the dimples. And we came up with all this stuff, and we even had a thing called cat interference. So if you rolled your ball and the cat darted out and knocked it away, that was cat interference. And then there were points associated with which dimple it got into. And we called it ooh ooh because if you missed, you weren't allowed to say darn it or dang it or F or whatever. You couldn't say any of that. You had to say ooh ooh. So if you missed, you said ooh ooh. And that's just good memory. And the most brilliant game I ever bought for me and my 2 boys was this game called Squirrels, SQU, I think there's a U, ARRELS. It's a little card game. And it is so fun. In fact, we just played Squirrels in May when the younger one came back from University of North Texas. But we were playing Squirrels, and as if the younger one was not even a teenager again, and my older one was just a teenager. We just laughed the whole time we played this Squirrels. And my younger one, he doesn't have a poker face. And he just resorts to cracking up uncontrollably while we play that game. It's just it's so precious to have those moments. And I hope you two get back to doing some Westerns. I don't know if that's done yet. Great shows. Keep it up, Carl. Sorry for the long message.
Thank you so much for that response and reply, MW. It's so fun to hear you converse about your history of family gaming in your family growing up, and now have continued that tradition in your current family from an early age and even still, which is really cool. I don't know if I myself growing up played a lot of games with the family, maybe like those kind of kids like board games like Operation or Candyland, and usually at someone else's house. We just didn't do that. Maybe we played cards. I think we early on we did play a lot of cards, from Hearts to Canasta, War, and those types of things. Even like the Uno game, which is card game ish. So yeah, I think we played cards a lot, but not like board games or those types of things. And I didn't really get into that until later with friends and at friends' houses. But that is great that you guys did. And thank you for the encouragement with RPG a day. Yeah, I think the bulk was easier. I've tried to do the daily before, and I just end up doing a series of 3 or 4 days in any case. And this time it was like, okay, I'll do day one, and then day two, and then I was like, okay, well, I missed track of some days, and I just did 4 and 4 and 4 and 4 like that lawyer guy here in the San Antonio in South Texas, and then I did a batch of 8. So it just worked out that way. And I agree with you. The people who do it daily like that and stick to it, dedicated, is pretty cool. And but whatever people have time for, I'm glad people participate and different people participate. And maybe here in this segment, I will do my little segment on Rocktober and the prompts inspired by hashtag RPG a day, and what I came up with and thought about, like I explained in the intro, for this type of kind of mental exercise and reflection on what you do. So I did days one. I'll do days 1 through 7 here, and I think there'll probably be more than one answer. It's just the way it is, right? And yeah, some of these I actually, as I'm looking at the questions, I think I need to pause and maybe answer them and reflect a little before I share those with you. And you know what? I will at least put the first 7 days, maybe I'll put all the days in the show notes and you can follow along, like I said earlier. But here we go. The first day one. So I should have done this on October 1st, the first day of October. The first album you bought with your own money. And I do remember this well. Again, I'm sticking to metal and rock music. And the first album I bought with my own money, and I think it was it from allowance money, but probably like chores money, and that was Rush Hemispheres, and that was back in 1978 when I was like 8 years old. Saved up that allowance, saved up that chore money to get that album, and I got it as a cassette because I had cassettes and we didn't really have a turntable, So and yeah, that was the first one I bought with my own money. And now I had been listening to hard rock and heavy metal for a few years, truth be told. So that was when I was 8, so probably about 6 or 7. Some neighbors introduced me to hard rock, heavy metal. The British wave of heavy metal was just starting. And I think one of the first heavy metal groups I listened to was Judas Priest from the Sad Wings of Destiny album and others around that time. I think they had like a best of compilation that had from Sad Wings of Destiny and Sinner and their third album, which was Stained Class, I believe, but don't quote me exactly. But that was pretty cool. And yeah, like the logo that Judas Priest had. I'd also been listening to like, Led Zeppelin. A neighbor had a turntable, and we listened to like some Led Zeppelin and stuff like that. And it was pretty neat way back then. But back when I feel like You could be a kids on bikes with your group and go out and play kick the can and other games, football in the street and all that. But yeah, back in the 70s. And I liked Rush because I had heard Rush 2112, and I didn't find that album, but hey, Rush Hemispheres, which I think came out in 77, 78 anyway, so it's relatively new, or maybe earlier. Um, Let me look that up. I should look that up to see when Rush Hemispheres came out, see how quickly I can type as I call that up. And then you're getting a lot more maybe information than you need from, yeah, it came out October 24th, 1978, so I probably bought it like, I would say late 78, early 79 or so. So that's pretty cool. All right. So the most often played song this year, and I have to go to Amazon Music for that. I really don't use Spotify, but I use Amazon Music a lot while I'm sitting here at my workstation. And I do have like Sirius XM, but I don't know how to track that. And of course, I just am at the whim of the DJ there, spinning whatever tunes they are. But I think the most frequent that I've played, voluntarily, it just comes up here as "The Spirit Returns" by Black Braid, and they kind of do this yearly. They tell you like, and I really like Black Braid. They're a group, a heavy metal group of indigenous folks that, hey, we all like heavy metal no matter your race, color, creed, or ethnicity. So it's really great evocative stuff. I know some of you won't like it because you'll say, well, that's Cookie Monster vocals and I don't understand what they say. But give it a few listens, and it's some really compelling riffs, great storytelling, and "The Spirit Returns" is the song that has been played the most frequently. That was day 2 for October 2nd. So day 3, oh, sorry, messed that up. I have to change those. So day 2 should have been the most recently played song, and that, I guess, I was at the whim of the DJ earlier today, and it was a song, I think, let me see. Well, that's cool. So I did find it very quickly. It was on the way back from an errand that I was actually from lunch today. It's a song called "The Floods of Triton." It's a new collaborative single by Mastodon, and they get have a guest singer there from Lamb of God, the band's frontman named Randy Blythe. He growls a lot, of course, but Mastodon is very melodic. They've been put in that category of like stoner metal with these heavy chords and stuff like that. So, but yeah, it was a really good song, and I heard it as I was, the last song I heard in its entirety as I was leaving the car when I came home from lunch today. So yeah, there you go. That's kind of funny. I guess it would have been different yesterday, but that's what it was today. So yeah, I flipped those two, but it doesn't matter. Hey, do most often played and most recently played in on either October 2nd or October 3rd. So day 4, best or favorite album cover, and I think going back in time, there's quite a few cool album covers, but I think the one that comes to mind is really but not my favorite, but the one that comes to mind and it gets like an honorable mention is the sort of haunting cemetery scene from Black Sabbath, or self-titled Black Sabbath album from way back. Of course, I wasn't. I think it came out in 69, 68, 69, so I wasn't alive back then. But I saw it, I've heard it, got some great songs on it. That's a very evocative and kind of spooky cover. I don't know, scary really. I see scary as more like jump scare, but spooky and haunting. But I think my favorite album cover is gotta be Iron Maiden, Peace of Mind. It has Eddie, their mascot, in a straitjacket and with chains and shaved. His head is shaved, and that one. And Eddie is like the character you see on every single album from Iron Maiden, starting from a strange looking juvenile Eddie and on Iron Maiden, to I think in their latest couple albums, like a Mayan, Aztec, Mesoamerican styled Eddie on the cover of their. I think it's I don't remember the name of their. Even though I went to their concert, the name of their most recent album. Actually, I forgot that they had another album after that album that I saw at the last concert. Well, actually, I saw um, a sort of a retrospective concert, the last one I saw of them. But I did see the Book of Souls live as well. But actually, their latest album is Senjutsu. So and that one is he's like a samurai, but he's been a samurai before in a previous in Iron Maiden made in Japan. So yeah, I think. But Peace of Mind, I just remember that album released in 1983, and that you know very black and yellow cover with the Iron Maiden writing logo, I guess, that you would have, and Eddie in a very angry pose, which I thought was kind of neat. I think Power Slave is a second somewhere in time. Those three albums have really great Eddie versions, and I like their. I guess I like their covers the best, right? Iron Maiden. They're nothing else really strikes me. So there you go. And I'm sure there's wonderful covers out there, but these are the ones that I remember and strike me the most. Day 5, the best, most evocative lyrics. I did mention Iron Maiden. This is true. Steve Harris is a master lyricist. That's the bassist. Writes most of the lyrics for the albums, and he has some really great songs. Rhyme of the Ancient Mariner off of Power Slave, like a homage to Samuel Taylor Coleridge's. That's almost like a summary of it. So maybe that's the best adapted lyrics. If we were splitting up best original, best adapted, I mean Neil Peart from Rush, master lyricist too. The whole 2112, like almost like a pseudo poem by an anonymous person, and he comes up with this story of the far future where these priest kings kind of have oppressed the people, and this man finds a guitar, and the priests kind of reject him because that's a from a bygone decadent age, and that's what destroyed mankind. And at the end, though, as he dies of a heartbreak because of this happening, the people who left for the stars come back. It has a very, probably inspired by the books of the New Sun type vibe, but it's pretty neat to do. I would say that those are very evocative. I also like one that I really like a lot is a Stargazer from Rainbow, when Ronnie James Dio was the vocalist, and I think it's off. I feel like it's off Rainbow Rising way back, but that is a really neat. I'd make a great intro to an adventure, Stargazer. So it's like this: you're among the many laborers building this tower for this wizard. He climbs to the top of the tower, and while it doesn't go as planned, I won't spoil it for you. But it's pretty neat how that song goes, and how the music really informs like the what's going on in the song. You can feel the hot wind, you can feel the desert and the toil of the narrator of this very evocative tale in lyrics. Best and favorite riffs. Uh, I would say Richie Blackmore. Speaking of Rainbow, Richie Blackmore has very iconic riffs. Tony Iommi from Black Sabbath has very iconic riffs. But and then Judas Priest, you always get that opening riff to Breaking the Law, right? So great lyrics. I think more recently, I would say that Pantera, especially Mouth for War, and that album, I think it's Vulgar Display of Power. I think that's the one that has Walk and Mouth for War, and it's those riffs by Dimebag Darrell and Co. are just to me some of the better ones. And then there's Slayer, right? Rain and Blood, the heavy stuff, and you know, South of Heaven, Seasons in the Abyss, the intros to that, and the lyrics from those are pretty neat. I think the opening one to Hell Awaits as well for Slayer. So it's pretty cool. And I guess the other one riff that I really have enjoyed is gotta say Metallica. They had some memorable ones, especially from Kill 'Em All, one of their earlier albums. I think it was I would say their first album, Four Horsemen. Of course, Also, Dave Mustaine contributed to that sort of. If you read the controversy of that, Four Horsemen, Phantom Lord, um, Seek and Destroy, one of the first songs I heard from Metallica. Very, that's the song that when I heard that, I'm like, man, I gotta track down this band and listen to their music. It was pretty neat. So those are my best favorite riffs. And finally, for day 7, and I'll continue next week sometime, group performer that is the most socially aware. I will say that I would say that System of a Down, led by Serge Tarkanian, has very. I think they really comment a lot on what's going on socially. A lot. I think it's pretty interesting and pretty important. Um, I would say I don't know. I feel like Metallica has been there too. They have a lot of songs about. Um, I don't know if they're necessarily anti-war. They're more like let's remember who are the people that fight in the wars, that type of thing. So from the song One and Disposable Heroes and some of their again earlier stuff. I'm not as familiar with their later stuff, but that's me. So yeah, I think and I would say even Slayer has some. Again, they're probably known for their sort of black metal type lyrics, evoking the devil and all that. But they really do talk about. They really do have some songs that point out war and violence and the uh, insane inaneness of it all. So I think those that's kind of important. It's not all about hate and anger. It is a response to, or I think these performers, singers, it's a response to what they see around them and how they express it. So I think that's pretty interesting. So like I'll post them all, and those are days 1 through 7. I hope you've enjoyed it, and now on to the next segment. Maybe it did not all start with my experience in Traveler, where I wanted the player characters to get to the action, just to keep the pace going. Sometimes you want to keep the pace going, and sometimes, I mean, there are different phases in an adventure. And exploration is exploration. You go through the hexes. There's a procedure, but then sometimes you've got to assault a ship, and you got to clear out the pirates and mutineers, and you want it to kind of have that pacing, like that Die Hard like pacing. And I feel like we got that in Traveler, but I think it goes back before that. And I know that the player characters had to do like an assault or an infiltration, really, but I did not use like the Pathfinder infiltration rule set that I mentioned earlier. I'll get to that, but they had to assault this sort of like Skaven filled Skaven are rat folk in Warhammer Fantasy. Skaven filled mountain, and the end goal was to destroy the crazy Skaven weapon that would destroy the world. Right. So I guess you could have rolled stealth at every point. And again, I mean, I've seen adventures written. I mean, if you want to have an encounter as a GM, just have the encounter, right? I mean, you don't have to let the have this false sense of failure while you railroad the characters, through a series of stealth rolls that eventually someone's going to fail. Um, to get that outcome, you want to let them use their skills and let them pick their fights. I mean, that's why they're where they're at, and especially in the Warhammer Fantasy, assault, infiltration of this mountain, Karatsk actually, and I just like, man, I don't want to bog us down. It's kind of fun. I mean, it's kind of neat if the character is like, you know, at different sections. I had decided, all right, I'll just have the worst or the best player, depending on the situation, make a roll and see what happens. I didn't really have all the characters roll, although I guess when it was contested, I think I did the addition of all skill levels. In the groups. Um, I've been a little slow, and I was just thinking about this concept, but I just really wanted to keep it to like one roll, and if they make it, awesome. If they fail, there's a mishap, and then they got to recover. So I think that was pretty cool, and it worked really well because they got in there was a fight, and then they snuck in. They avoided a fight to get further up and inside the mountain. Um, they avoided another fight with some fun use of diplomacy and character skills and even character acting. Um, and it worked really well. So then they could get to the conclusion, which was the fast-paced 5-minute countdown, where the dwarf's like, "We're gonna blow this mountaintop," and he lit the fuse for this sort of fail-safe, you know, doomsday setup that the dwarves at Karakskig had created, and he probably thought, well, I think we have more time. Maybe the mountain's not going to blow up, but yeah, it was going to. And he's like, he realized that as they were going up, they go, oh, this keeps going up, these explosives. So yeah, it was really fun, really fast paced, and that's like, I think what you want in an adventure. You want the characters to be on their toes, to keep moving, right? So yeah, I think that was a pretty neat and pretty cool way to do that. So that's what happened, and I think I've talked about that adventure, that game before. Um, mages swooping in on demigriffs or as demigriffs. I don't know. Someone being turned into a griffin. People diving off a sky bridge to toboggan down the side of this mountain. Yeah, on a shield. That's pretty cool. So and killing a bunch of Skaven. Well, that's the whole plan. At least that was their plan. So then get to Traveler, and with Traveler, um, so here's the setup. I'm playing, just by the way, action aboard the King Richard. It's a really cool classic traveler adventure from created by FASA, and the author is Bill Pally, circa 1981. So the set these characters have been aboard this King Richard. They solved a murder mystery. They had some doubts about it, so then I just ran the second adventure I wanted to run out of this action board. There's several things you could do and run in this action board, and they have FASA also has like pretty good set of deck plans for the King Richard as well, and I threw those onto Roll20 when we needed them, etc. But a lot of interaction. The player characters solve this murder mystery, then were knighted for things that they had done earlier in the campaign. Then they have this other, like, we got to get to another planet before this conference, so they're heading out there, and then of course then this happens, this action aboard situation where the King Richard is assaulted on the way out to the jump point by pirates. Like this freighter is pretending to like have engine trouble, and that runs into King Richard, and but it's like boarders, and then there's a mutiny on board as well at the same time, all run by this pirate called the Nightshade. And the player characters take the adventure hook. They're like, yeah, we're going on board, we're gonna save the King Richard, and they figure out where to go in, and they have like an encounter to kind of settle themselves on board the ship. And they're like, well, how do we need to get to two places, the bridge and engineering. So they decided engineering first, because one of the players had kind of formed a relationship with the chief engineer on board, and the chief engineer was sending him coded messages, stuff like, or through Morse code or something equivalent. So then they're like, okay, well, how do we get there? So then they went all die hard. They crawled in the equivalent of the Traveler Jeffries tubes, and then I could have like had them roll every so often, but I was just like, man, I want to get to like what's going to happen in engineering, the fun fight. So I just had them roll once. Each player roll once. If there's a mishap, there's because you failed, well, that's what happens. If not, then yeah, let's just keep going. And we did keep going. It was definitely pretty hilarious, because then at the end, when the player tried to like stealth across the tube above engineering, unfortunately he climbed over a weak spot and crashed, a la Bruce Willis's character in Die Hard, onto the ground, and a fight ensued. It was very exciting. Yeah, and they took engineering. And then in the next session, like, okay, well, how are we going to get to the bridge? We got to get to the bridge. Because other things are happening in Bogdan. I want the players to be the big damn heroes in the story. And they're acting really fast. They took engineering. They did some things to keep control of engineering and messed with the Nightshade's plans. And then they're like, well, how do we get up there? How do we get up there the quickest? And they're like, oh, we're just going to EVA it. So they went out into space and they EVA'd to near the bridge, to an airlock near the bridge. And it was great. Again, I'm not going to do like every 100 feet or so, or whatever that is, 30 meters or so. I just did one roll and let's go. So I think that was pretty cool, and the players really enjoyed it. It was exciting. We got to get stuff done. So that would be pretty cool. Or rather, it was pretty cool. And then that kind of brought me to this idea of the infiltration. So in my ongoing Bloodlords campaign, so the first two chapters were kind of traditional. You walk through the forest, you find the place you're supposed to find, and then in the first chapter of this we're in the second book of Bloodlords Graveclaw. So I won't try to spoil everything, but it's a traditional game. You go through the forest, you find the place you're supposed to get to, defeat the foe. Then in the second chapter, you go to the town, and then you know where the foe, you find out where the foe is, and then you do some investigation, and then you find the foe and fight the foe where they're at. And then they put, and this I'll explain the reason why. So the next place, they kind of had to do the same thing, but here in Bloodlords it says, and this might be a little spoilerish, but this town, well, I'll maybe redact names for you, but this town poses a unique challenge to the characters. They're strangers, and they're living strangers. Some of them are undead. It's Bloodlords, you can play undead. They have the Book of the Dead from Pathfinder 2, where you can, and one character's a skeleton, one character became a vampire. Yep. And is that the only two? The other three characters are still alive. But one might become a vampire. He has a Dampier heritage, and you can kind of evolve to that, I guess. But strangers will quickly attract attention, and no one is really in a press town, so no one wants to spill any information openly about the boss. So the characters can't just walk into town, ask questions like they did the previous one, and find the adversary that they're after. So instead, this chapter was structured as an infiltration, and it refers you to the Pathfinder Game Mastery Guide for the full infiltration rules. But basically, what is an infiltration here? And an infiltration effectively is, right, at a basic level, it presents a series of obstacles and challenges the players have to overcome as a group or individually to get past a certain stage. And in this, there were two stages in this sort of challenge. And then it also gives the players flexibility and options to try to tackle an obstacle or a number of obstacles during each phase. Then they overcome the stage, get to another stage or to the goal. And if they fail an obstacle, then there could be present a challenge, or one of the things that you track in this particular infiltration are something called awareness points. So you have awareness points, edge points, and infiltration points as you confront obstacles and discover opportunities as well. So the characters gain awareness points. That means that the adversaries become more aware. Infiltration points are the number of successes they have to get during a certain obstacle, and sometimes it's individual, sometimes it's as a group. And then finally, there are edge points, which become meta currency during the whole challenge, the infiltration challenge. So it is kind of like a 4th edition skill challenge, but much more in depth. And there are 4 phases in this infiltration. There's a preparation, when the characters are on the outskirts and they can perform some downtime activities to make their infiltration easier. Then they had to locate the boss, and they could stick together or split up. They actually split up and did some certain things while exploring in the town. And once they overcame those obstacles and they pinpoint the location of the boss and they infiltrate the location, That's the second objective, was to infiltrate the location where the boss was. And finally, they got to get out and escape. And that depends on how much awareness, or how kind of subtle or not the characters have been. So it was really kind of neat. The character, and it gives some suggestions, but the characters can kind of do their own thing and figure out their own way, and give me suggestions so they can take full use of their skills. I think what that allows you to do is to avoid the sort of excuse me, every character rolls a stealth roll and one's going to fail because they're the one in the full armor, and then something's going to happen. So this gives like all the characters to kind of shine with their various skill sets. So it's kind of neat. They were pretty subtle about it. I would say there's some really cool things that happened, and they were able to get there. And so, like, we did one session that was all infiltration, and then I asked the player characters what they thought afterwards, and I did get a response from at least one of them, actually. And if I can find like what they said, I will tell you what they said. So I'm finding it. Maybe it's in the other channel. Right. So one character said, I liked how they did it. I didn't think it was too easy because they ended up burning quite a few hero points, which was the edge points throughout the session, and then their own hero points that they had individually. And they thought it was a much better version, like I said, of the 4E thing, and that 4E kind of did for outside of combat things. So they enjoyed it. And I think they made a further comment the next session that, and because we had talked about, that there's this thing that Adventure Pass, especially from Paizo, for whatever reason, kudos to Joe Richter for having his Adventure Path kind of almost at the last book, right? I think they're at the second to last book. I just have gone as far as 5 books in the Pathfinder Adventure Path. Now it's first edition Kingmaker, and then it just went south at the beginning of the 6th book. And usually, though, they crap out around book 2. I was able to finish Dead Suns, the first Starfinder Adventure Path, and that was definitely some great dedication for the players. Oh, as a note, I just noticed that they do give XP awards at each stage of the obstacle for overcoming them. So, you can fight things and make it harder and to be unsubtle about it if you want. But if you're subtle, then you kind of, it's a resource game, right? So if you're subtle, then you don't have to use as many resources, and you can get to where you need to get. So they did create some opportunities. They found the revenants, and one character said, I'm going to go check out the cemetery. They found the revenants of a couple who had been killed by the boss, and they wanted revenge. And then they actually tracked down someone who was not really happy with the boss, so another mover and shaker in the town, an agent of something called the Carter's Consortium, so the Teamsters Union, effectively. And they're like, okay, yeah, if you do this and put me as a leader, I'll give you some money. So it was pretty neat. And then so we got to this one session. We got to where they got to the boss. There was like a quote unquote cutscene where the boss is like, uh-oh, and kind of jumps out the window effectively. And then that made the next session just a running fight with the boss. And I thought it went really well. The boss and then the boss's like chief hench construct. It was really cool and really very enjoyable. Led to a slick conclusion, I think, to this chapter in Graveclaw. So now we're on to the next chapter, and it's probably going to be something different. It's actually called Biology Lessons, and it looks like the characters, I don't know if they're going to do the infiltration, but it's going to be more role playing, I think, to get to where they need to go, which would be kind of neat. So I really have enjoyed this adventure. This one is more of like track down what's going on, and then it kind of gets better, I believe, after we finish Graveclaw, which we should finish probably, I would say, maybe 1, maybe 2 sessions. I think we've done one or 2 sessions per chapter. And it's moving relatively fast, so I'm pretty happy with that. And as I was saying, the players are like they're enjoying these adventure paths more, and the games we're playing more. We're actually onto the last book of the Enemy Within campaign, Empire in Ruins, and it's gone really well. And they were asking me what's different, and I think I just, maybe we're older and more mature, but I just figured out ways to make things move faster through the boring parts that people might think are boring parts, know how to do these sort of skill challenges and investigations faster. The characters have had their own ways of doing things that have, kind of gone around the general plan, so they feel it's not as railroady as some of these adventure paths have been in the past. And yeah, I think things like this infiltration mechanic have really helped to keep that staying power in these long campaigns. So yeah, check it out. I'll put some links in the show notes, like M.W. Lewis and the games I talked about, and the like. I'll list my 31 days in Rocktober to remember the kind of music you like and your favorite parts about the music that you like. I'm focusing on metal and hard rock, but hey, you do you. So thank you so much for listening. It's been a little long-winded, I guess, because it's been like almost a month. And thank you for being patient. So my wife Amy does the cover clip art, and I have a cool set of music. I forgot the intro, but you'll get the outro. If you have any comments, shoot me a line, geomologist@gmail.com. I have a SpeakPipe account linked to this, but the easiest way is to drop me a voice message through the Discord, or a written message like some of my players do. Anyway, thank you so much for listening. But one more thing, if you listen all the way through of the outro music, you will definitely catch the rainbow rush vibe, 2112, the hemispheres, the stargazer feel. So yeah, have a listen and go listen to some metal. Rock on, up the irons, horns up.
Oh.